Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Wildfires have encroached on much of Western Canada in the past few summers. But what impact does this have on the ecosystem? Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs spoke with hunters and trappers about their concerns in Canada's largest national park.
Robert Grandjam Jr. has 100 beaver pelts to bring to market. He's a third-generation full-time trapper.
The fact that I'm out in Wood Buffalo National Park is one of very few that do trap still. And trapping was the most important because it had a fur record each year that you had to produce as your staple, as that you're exercising what you're entitled to.
But Grandjam is fearful that his traditional territory within Wood Buffalo National Park is shrinking because of wildfires.
It's quite phenomenal to see the 150 to 200-year-old trees that are, ancient, and it's an old-growth forest. There's a lot of activity of smaller wildlife in there. As a trapper, it's good populations for myself as a trapper to go and harvest in these areas. When a forest fire comes through, it doesn't, choose or pick what to burn or where to burn. It just destroys everything in its path.
Richard Mercredi, a longtime hunter, has spent all of his life on the land. For him, the fires put traditional lifestyles at risk.
You lose a lot of, for hunting and stuff, the youth that you have, your children and stuff can't hunt because the place is all burnt, right? And there's no places to go. There's only a certain amount of places to go, and a lot of the park is not accessible. So if you're either traveling by a river or by boat.
Mercredi says there's drastic changes in the ecosystem. Prairies, once lush, are drying up and being replaced by willows.
And you can see it if you drive along the highway and it's raining out sometimes. I know along the other highway there was a fire. The water was just pouring out of the bush into the ditch and running away because there's no longer any moss to hold it either.
Wood Buffalo National Park is roughly the size of Switzerland. It's home to one of the world's largest deltas and many animals. The land takes a long time to recover after a forest fire. When the soil burns hot, it destroys seeds and roots and puts a strain on already fragile water systems. Trappers like Grandjam say they've already noticed that animal habitat is shrinking because of these factors. According to Parks Canada, in the last decade, roughly 45% of wood buffalo has burned. Jean Morin has been working for those last 10 years and says some seasons the park will see up to 50 fires.
Summer we get up to 20 hours of sunlight, and we experience a lot of night growth. Sometimes you come up with a plan and it's in place. You want to do the plan the following day, but overnight the fire will double in size.
On the ground and in the air, you can see the large burn zones. Wood Buffalo has 16 seasonal firefighters. When a fire breaks out, the fire management team references a data bank that lists what they call values at risk. Things like cabins, infrastructure, and cultural sites that they will protect. Unfortunately, old-growth forest is not part of this.
Fire, not just in Wood Buffalo National Park, has been shaping those ecosystems and landscape and vegetation for years. And wildlife has adapted to that. And in fact, it's needed. It's a fire-dependent ecosystem. The way we have the park organized is we have fire management zones, and we prioritize the zones where there are, again, values at risk and things to protect. Then areas that are near the values at risk. Then there's area which is more in the middle of the park that we would let the fire do its own thing more naturally, always protecting values at risk, though.
Grandjam says he wants to see old-growth forest and animals as values at risk.
I've trapped in Wood Buffalo National Park and seen the devastation of a fire, and it's up to 15 years before the small little guys will come back into, and I say that's the weasels, the squirrels, the martens, the fishers that will return to these burnt areas. It's never a continuous thing where the conservation aspect for Parks Canada's management plan fire management plan takes in consideration that, you know, it's great to burn and it's good, it's necessary, but it's not necessary to burn large quantities of land.
All of Grandjam's beaver pelts were accepted at market. But he's worried how fires will impact his trapping season next winter. Charlotte Mart Jacobs, APTN National News, Wood Buffalo National Park.
And wildfires have forced hundreds of people from 2 First Nations in northeastern Manitoba to flee their homes. And they've also prompted warnings about air quality in both Ontario and Manitoba.
A lot heavier up there than it is here. It's really good to not have to worry about what he's breathing in.
On Sunday, the Canadian Red Cross transported about 150 people from Little Grand Rapids and another 50 from Pungazi First Nation to Winnipeg. So far, only the elderly, babies, and people with chronic respiratory problems are being evacuated. Across the border in northeastern Ontario, hundreds of residents of Keewaywin First Nation remain out of their home because of the Red Lake 23 wildfire. More than 20 fires are burning along the Manitoba-Ontario border. And we'd like to hear what you have to say. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptn news. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest Indigenous news. In the Sudbury area, a Wanapitei business owner says his livelihood is being threatened after a recent vote. First Nation recently voted in favor of selling cannabis, but a last-minute bylaw could pose some problems for local dispensaries. CTV's Ian Campbell explains.
It should be business as usual for Creator's Choice, but today is different. The Wanapitei First Nation recently voted in favor of approving the sale of cannabis on its territory, which came as a relief to owners.
Because it shows that the people have spoken through a vote as the chief and council wanted, and we got a yes vote.
But the relief was short-lived. Just a few hours later, the council published bylaws on their website prohibiting sales not regulated by Health Canada.
These rules they're not even medicinal. Our business runs on the value of medicinal. We help people on a daily basis. My wife helps people with cancer. It's just pain management.
You know, it's not just Creator's Choice company that would be losing employees and jobs for people. You know, it goes to our growers. It goes to, you know, all the other First Nations companies that we use their products, different tinctures and edibles and oils and cancer-fighting oils.
The decision comes as the province has decided it will issue only 8 First Nation licenses. There are roughly 100 Indigenous dispensaries in the province.
What I've seen so far in Wanapitei is there's been a lot of space between, you know, the elected leadership and the proponents of cannabis in that community.
Former Ontario Regional Chief Isidore Day runs Bimadswin, a company that focuses on Indigenous nationhood. He's been working to help craft a cannabis framework for First Nations. While he respects councils, he says he tends to side with the Rocks. For now, the doors here stay open. The Rocks plan on expanding their business as well as continuing their advocacy work. CTV News has reached out to the Wanapitei Chief and Council for comment. Ian Campbell, CTV News, Wanapitei First Nation.
The BC Civil Liberties Association says Canada's spy agencies spied on peaceful protesters and Indigenous groups. That story's coming up, but first a look at something we're working on.
It's become a cultural phenomenon. Over 3 days, more than 60,000 people from countless fictional worlds come together at the Montreal Comic Con. It's an event where you can bet on seeing the impossible. But if you're an Indigenous illustrator,
oh, there's a villain from the new Spider-Man movie over there,
or an impressionable attendee, this convention provides insights on how the comic book world sees you.
Just in the past maybe 2-3 years, probably due to social media, there's a lot more Indigenous comic book artists that I'm becoming aware of, and I think that they are all networking. I think there's a lot of potential there, and these artists are really fantastic artists. They're not there because they're Indigenous, they're there because they're good storytellers.
So, how far have things come? I'm Lindsay Richardson, and that's coming up this week on APTN National News.
Here's a look at Tuesday's weather forecast starting on the sunny East Coast. 27 in Fredericton, 26 for Halifax. Rain and 7 for Nain, 11 and showers for Happy Valley Goose Bay. Showers and 29 for Montreal, 26 under the sun in Chibougamau. 31 for Windsor, Sarnia, Peterborough, and Ottawa. 27 under sunny skies in Thunder Bay. Rain and 23 in Sioux Lookout. A high of 15 under the sun for Churchill. 18 and sunny in Puckatawagan. A rainy day in Winnipeg with a high of 22. Showers and 20 for Brandon. 22 under the sun in Saskatoon. 1 degree cooler in North Battleford. 18 and sunny skies for Uranium City and Stony Rapids. Welcome back. The British Columbia Civil Liberties Association has unveiled 19 volumes of documents showing the Canada Spy Service collected thousands of pages of files on groups engaged in peaceful advocacy and protest against the Northern Gateway Pipeline. The group has published what it calls a trove of heavily redacted CSIS documents today on a website called the Protest Papers. It says the papers will show that CSIS was spying on environmentalists and sharing that information with the National Energy Board and the petroleum industry. The now defunct Northern Gateway Pipeline was officially quashed in late 2016. A court ruling was partially lifted, allowing the BC Civil Liberties Association to go public with the documents. For more on the Protest Papers, we're joined by Josh Patterson, the Executive Director of the BC CLA. Josh, thanks for being with us. What do these papers show?
Well, what these papers show is that CSIS, Canada's national spy agency, has gathered over 8,000 pages of documents about the activities of peaceful groups who were involved in opposition to the Enbridge Northern Gateway Pipeline. These were folks who were trying to get involved in the National Energy Board hearings, that were considering a decision on the pipeline, groups that were doing things like painting posters, literally in church basements, organizing petitions and meetings to talk about the project. There's over 8,000 pages of documents that CSIS was forced to release, and we've made those public today.
So what is the proof in these documents of the allegations?
Well, it's really hard to see because so much of the documents have been blacked out. Sometimes there's whole pages that have nothing on them except a huge black box. We filed a complaint, the BC Civil Liberties Association filed a complaint in 2014 alleging that a variety of different groups, including the Indigenous Idle No More movement, had been surveilled and spied upon by CSIS and the RCMP. And the complaint against CSIS went to a hearing, and there was a whole secret hearing where witnesses like me and others who gave our testimony to that inquiry, we were actually legally banned from ever talking about that evidence again. I continue to be under a gag order today. That commission decided that CSIS had done nothing wrong, and yet CSIS had gathered all of this information about the peaceful activities of individuals. We are appealing the decision that they did nothing wrong to the Federal Court of Canada, and we're hoping this fall to have a decision on whether or not it's lawful for CSIS to gather these huge troves of information about people who are politically involved on environmental projects.
So if it was shown, I guess, at the hearing that nothing was done wrong, why is it a concern that CSIS is allegedly collecting and sharing this information?
Well, we don't think it was shown that nothing was done wrong. We disagree with the conclusion. What CSIS said is, yeah, we were monitoring some people. We were looking for threats to pipelines, for example, but we also gathered a lot of some incidental information on other people. They say that they did nothing wrong. we say if you're gathering thousands of pages of information about groups that are peacefully involved in democratic processes in their communities, about folks who are involved in peaceful Idle No More protests, we think there is something deeply wrong with that. We think our spy agencies shouldn't be accumulating 8,000 pages of files and dossiers on people and groups that are just getting involved in their communities or that are trying to assist and participate towards establishing their Indigenous nations authorities to make decision over their own land. We think that that's wrong, that it's inappropriate, so we're challenging that finding in court, and we will see where it goes later this fall and winter.
Like you say, 8,000 plus pages. Do you know, are there Indigenous people singled out in these documents?
Not by name, but of course there's a long history that viewers will be well aware of different Indigenous activists who have been surveilled, spied upon, had files created on them for many, many years, and not just on environmental issues, on issues related to their advocacy and child protection in other places. So this is not a, the idea that First Nations folks are having information gathered about them because they get involved politically is nothing new in this country. Right. It's a deeply problematic legacy and present that we have to deal with, and we're hoping that we're going to get some transparency on what happened here. We know from documents that it appears that at least RCMP members had infiltrated aspects of the Idle No More movement, that they had informants in the Idle No More movement. That's one of the things that we've complained about, and we don't have, that was the RCMP part of it. What we're talking about today is CSIS's involvement, and there's so much blacked out in these pages that we can't tell who might be caught up in this.
Certainly something we saw happening in Standing Rock as well. Josh, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us.
Thank you very much.
And for more on the protest papers, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Time for another quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Here's the rest of Tuesday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. 21 under the sun for Fort McMurray, 20 in High Level. Showers and 26 in Medicine Hat, 18 in Red Deer. 23 in Vancouver, 31 under the sun in Kamloops. Sunny and 21 for Fort Nelson, rain and 19 in Smithers. A warm day in Dawson, 29 under sunny skies, 28 in Beaver Creek. 20 for Wrigley, Fort Simpson, Trout Lake, and Fort Liard. A high of 6 for Sax Harbor, 12 in Pawatuck, 18 in Colville Lake. Showers and 5 for Chesterfield, 17 with rain in Arviette. 12 in Arctic Bay, 17 and sunny for Clyde River. Welcome back. On Friday night, the beleaguered Kativik Regional Police Force in Nunavik was involved in a fatality. Known as the KRPF, over the last 5 years, they've had been involved with more serious injuries and deaths than any other Indigenous police force in Canada. APTN's Tom Fenario joins us from Montreal to talk about the Friday incident. Tom, good to see you. What can you tell us about this most recent incident involving the KRPF?
Well, at 10:30 on Friday night, the Kativik police were called to a house in Salouit, where apparently a fight had broken out amongst many people. To give you an idea, Salouit is one of 14 communities in Quebec's Nunavik region. It's actually the second highest most. It's closer to, say, Iqaluit than even Montreal. That's how far north it is. Anyhow, the Kativik police show up at where the fight is happening, and they come upon a man dragging out a severely beaten man by his legs out of a house. The police see this happening. They quickly exit their vehicle, but they neglect to park their car properly. And while they are chasing the suspect, that is the man who did the dragging, the car that they did not park ran over the victim. The victim was brought to the local health center, where he subsequently died of his injuries.
And so, Tom, what do Kativik police have to say about this?
Kativik police do not comment on cases that are under investigation, which this case currently is, by the Quebec Independent Investigation Bureau. However, they have spoken in the past about their history of violence with the people that they police up in Nunavik. When I say history of violence, to give you a context, if you look at the numbers between July 2016 until the end of 2018, the Kativik Regional Police Force has killed or seriously injured people at the rate of 55 times that of Montreal Police. So it is a problem. Police Chief Jean-Pierre Larose has acknowledged this problem to us in the past, and he blames a lot of the problems up there on the chronic underfunding of the Kativik Regional Police Force. To give you an idea, he said in 2017 they paid out enough overtime to pay for 16 additional officers. He says his men are tired, they're overworked, and often they are inexperienced because they're unable to retain people because they work under such difficult situations. Part of what makes this so tragic is the Kativik Police just got funding for more officers. 24 officers over the next 5 years will be coming in. However, they have yet to actually implement these officers because they have trouble recruiting people. So just basically the problems just kind of keep cycling. There's no proof yet to say that what happened on Friday has to do with inexperience or overworked officers, but this is just things that have been brought up in the past as reasons.
So with police not speaking, what's been the reaction amongst the Inuit of Nunavik?
Well, there's lots of resentment and anger sometimes towards the Kativik Regional Police Force because they are, although they're technically an indigenous police force, they are in fact mostly non-Inuit. Many of them, and when I say non, I mean like most vastly majority non-Inuit do not speak Inuktitut, which is a big problem because that's the main language up there. So there's a lot of resentment I see online and people I speak to, but I also do see folks talking online about looking in the mirror, talking about Nunavik's high crime rate and how problems up there need to be addressed one way or the other. Long story short, it's just a really sad story for everyone involved, tragic, and folks are looking at solutions and hopefully will be coming in the future, but right now that's of little solace to people in Saluit.
Yeah, it is tragic indeed. Tom, appreciate you taking some time to bring us up to date on this.
Thanks, Dennis.
A report now on the future of the Hudson Bay Company's namesake department stores. BNM Bloomberg has learned that HBC is exploring the possibility of closing some of the Bay locations, as well as actively looking to restructure some of its leases with store landlords. This comes as the company prepares for a $1.74 billion privatization bid following mounting pressure from stakeholders. HBC owns some of the 90 or so Bay department stores and leases the others. Experts say HBC is, quote, sitting on way too much real estate. Stores are potential targets for either full closures or restructuring as other commercial property spaces. It's unclear how these developments might affect employees. The company eliminated 2,000 jobs as part of a restructuring in 2017. And that is your APTN National News for this Monday. For much more, including reaction to the release of the so-called protest papers, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.